Thanks for joining us for this enlightening conversation about none other than AI. As Noah said, I'm Denise Graves. I'm a Commercialization Program Director for a translational research program sponsored in part by the state of Michigan in transportation and mobility at the University of Michigan. At the Innovation Partnerships team, which is the university's tech transfer office, where we do licensing, ventures, and corporate research alliances. So I'd like to ask the panel today to introduce themselves and give us a little bit more context of how they can participate in the conversation. So would you like to start?
Okay. Anthony Lay. I am VP of Marketing for Macronix. Macronix is a semiconductor company in Taiwan, headquartered in Taiwan, but we have offices here. We actually have folks here in Detroit focused on automotive here. So we do various types of memory, non-volatile memory, specific for automotive, but also pretty general. Our products go across all markets, but automotive is definitely one of our biggest focus. And autonomous driving, AI is kind of like next generation products that we're focused on.
Great, thank you. Max?
Yes, my name is Matt Ke. I'm the head of AUO Corporation in America. We are here in Farmington, Michigan for I think more than 10 years. Dedicating automotive. Company-wise, we actually not only automotive, we have a lot of the product. Probably every day you are using it without knowing it. Your TV, when you take the air flight, Delta, a lot of air flight, the infotainment systems. You go into the ATM, withdraw money. That 90% is from us. If you don't believe it, knock it, you'll see it. Yeah. Basically, that's what we do. We've been dedicating in automotive more than 10 years. We are setting all the kind of the engineering resources here to support local OEM. It's been very rewardable journey. Yeah.
Thank you, Matt.
Great. Hey, I'm Arthur. I lead the systems engineering team at Motional. Motional is a company where we are developing L4 technology. If you come to Las Vegas, you'll see our cars driving around, not surprisingly. My particular path is a little bit different than I think most, in that I have a fairly intense technical background in which I got a PhD from Harvard in physics. Followed by that, I joined Waymo, in which I developed their LiDAR, the LiDAR on top of their vehicle. That's on hundreds of vehicles today. You can see in San Francisco. Followed by that, I worked also on improving their poor weather performance. I know it's a question that comes up all the time and with automated vehicles, and you'll see lots of marketing coming out from Waymo. Search for it if you don't believe me, and most of that actually came from efforts that I started there. Following that, I moved to Motional, where I started off architecting their perception and AI, where a lot of AI started at Motional. Their perception system, the system that detects objects around the vehicle. And followed by that, I kind of took over the systems engineering team, given the success of that, where we put together the set of evidence necessary to feel confident for any one of our milestones, public or otherwise, to say that we met the intent of where we feel our technology is. I could talk more about that. I think we'll take, I suppose all of us we'll take questions as we go for these, but otherwise, good to be here.
Great, thank you, Arthur. Just want to mention before we get started that AUO and Macronix are representing the Taiwan Excellence and the Taiwanese industry. So thank you for being here, everyone. So let's start at kind of the 30,000-foot level, if you will. Where does AI fit into your corporate strategy? Do you want to go start, Anthony?
I think I can. I'll start.
Matt?
We're in memory. So if you think about in a system, every system has memory. We're just similar to AU. We're pretty much everywhere too. Cell phones, TVs, pretty much in everything. So definitely in cars, and as I think cars evolve, become smarter, our devices also have to be smarter. So we have new technology that we develop based on our 3D NOR stacking capability that we embed what we call Vortex in there. What it is really, and it's an accelerator technology for kind of edge devices. And if you think about it, cars are edge devices, right? So devices at the edge, even at the edge, which is like sensors, LiDARs and stuff, they also have to be pretty smart. Decisions have to be made fairly quickly at this edge. Otherwise, you can't keep going to the cloud and back. I think the bandwidth just isn't there at this point. And so if you can make a lot of the decision within the memory itself, it actually helps the processor kind of offload and do other things. So that's where we are looking at advancements on edge devices in automotive.
Great, thank you. Matt?
Yes, I think our company probably one of the very few corporation understand the power of the data, especially from where we come from our manufacturing side. So a lot of the sensing technology we've been using in manufacturing, big data collecting and getting to the decision making, kind of the progressing of the AI learning in the factory. And now we are getting in the automotive sectors, and we understand in the HMI system how to interact with the driver with that sensing technology. Also, of course, the power of computing. They can facilitate a lot of the decision making in a short period of time and also enhance the safety for driving. So we kind of embedded that kind of idea, and then to enrich the display experience for the driver, for the passenger. I think that's what we are kind of looking into, and then looking for the cooperations with the automakers. That's what we are. Yeah.
Great, thank you. Arthur?
Great, yeah, this is an easy one for somebody like me working on L4 technology, but very many of the software subcomponents that we develop for our vehicle really are fundamentally neural network processing units in which we utilize AI for many of the onboard tasks that our vehicle undertakes. For example, the one I mentioned earlier, perception. In addition, in order to have that sort of infrastructure, that performant AI, you need to have quite a bit of infrastructure focused on ML development and engineering. That's another place where we invest heavily. A lot of people look to places like, OpenAI or Google for incredible machine learning infrastructure. I'm proud up here to say that we've also made similar investments and have quite good infrastructure internally. And lastly, in my role right now, I think a lot about how we verify and validate AI systems differently than traditional systems engineering approaches or safety engineering approaches have approach safety and readiness. And so, that's another way where we invest heavily in very good people and time and money to ensure that we have as good of a safety record as we have today, to be honest.
Great, so I'll go off script a little bit and ask a self-serving question. So when you think about AI and new technology and how that gets developed in your respective organizations, do you look to build that internally, or are you looking at maybe institutions, universities, faculty who might be experts in that area and license something into your organization?
Yeah, I think especially in Taiwan, our CEO, Min Woo, he works very closely with the local universities over there, for sure. And he actually spends a lot of time with them, and also does company and personal investments in technologies. Not only just process technology, but now because of AI is growing, there's a lot of investment in Taiwan, for sure, related to that.
All right.
Yeah, I think, yes. Actually, you cannot do the things by yourself. It has to be the ecosystem, or it has to be, you commit to that, and it has to be how you connect it to the key player in the ecosystem. So, like Anthony mentioned, in Taiwan, we have a lot of the cooperation as well with the college, and we are trying to extend their connections globally with the leading faculties or leading institutions for sure. That's how we want to establish the ecosystem. Actually, our company pretty much commit to the automotive, so we initiate we call MES, Mobility Ecosystem Summit every year. So we invite the key players in the industry, Microsoft, all those key players, OEMs give us the direction. So pretty much we are very dedicated and committed. Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, I actually went on a trip to Korea, one of our parent companies, Hyundai, about a year ago, and part of my trip was to visit local universities to see what technology they had out there. By and large, though, Motional invests in in-house AI solutions, and we have very, very good people who who readily discuss the state of the art as described in most of the big conferences, for example, NIPS or Coral, for example. Furthermore, Hyundai, as a parent company, one thing that we're very lucky to have is they actually have investments in other robotics ventures. I highly recommend looking it up. It's and that's also in the Boston area where I am, and so another place where we discuss collaborations is actually with those ventures in the Boston area. Another place where we learn from one another.
Great, thank you. Now, when you think about AI fitting into your corporate strategy, what are some of the key technologies that are driving AI-powered driver assistance systems today? And do those algorithms really make a difference when it comes to getting from point A to point B and the safety of those systems?
Yeah, maybe I could start here.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
there's a sorry, I keep thinking that we have to go left, our right to left. But
we can shake it up a little bit.
Yeah, we should shake it up a
Yeah.
bit, I think. We hold safety at like a excruciatingly high bar at the company, such that we have actually a record that's kind of incredible as a company. But what that means is that we put a lot of effort towards that interface of safety and AI, and I kind of oversee a lot of that at the company personally. Where I see, to answer the question directly, some of the places where we see AI play an important safety role is that we have very specific metrics for how well our algorithms do in ensuring the reaction time of our vehicle is notably faster than a human driver, for example, in a host of situations. I would say beyond a human's capability, actually. And so in terms of ensuring the safety of our vehicle, these AI algorithms let us do that. Those metrics that reflect that, they without them, it's not clear we would ever reach that high bar that we do internally already for many, if not most, of those metrics. They really unlock that for us in a way that, at least in previous iterations of that software that didn't have AI, really struggled. And so as we continue to build it up, as we continue to improve those algorithms, that's only going to improve. That's another point I want to make is that AI algorithms, much more so than a lot of the classical approaches to many of the important functions that your vehicle has to have when performing when having many driver assist features, generally generalizes and improves over time in a much more scalable fashion than many of the classical approaches. And so, ask me again in a year, and I think you'll see we, are doing even better. And that's kind of like part of how AI feeds well and fits well within our strategy in general.
Great, thank you. Matt, Anthony, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think our company focus more in the interior, right? I mean, the biggest real estate in the interior, the display, that plays a significant role to interact with the driver, the passengers. So when it comes to the safety, or how to embed the sensor technology and kind of leveraging what we're good at in Taiwan, the ICT industry, on the computing, on the the software, everything. So that plays a big playground for us to contribute. So kind of a little bit echo to previous question, right? So this would be somehow our ecosystem or platform for a company like us, and then with the supply chain partner to focusing. Yeah.
Great. Anthony?
Yeah, in terms of ADAS and safety, I'll just start, our company's highly focused on reliability, such. We're all certified in, ISO and such. I think that's at the minimum level. I think when you start going to ADAS, the biggest question is, like a lot of car companies, is what is enough to make a car level 3, level 4, right? There are some companies like Tesla that says, look, cameras are enough, right? A lot of other companies believe you have to have LiDAR, right? So it comes down to what are people willing to pay? And I think in algorithms and stuff, technology, it comes down to the price points, right? So the LiDAR system isn't cheap. That's why it's not in every car. So in the end, do we end up going to just level 3? That's enough for a lot of users, or only robotaxis go to level 4? From our perspective, we work with pretty much every company, because every system that uses sensors has to have some sort of a boot device. That's us, typically. And there are requirements from our end. We're more on the hardware. We don't deal with a lot of the algorithms, but we do work with software companies to ensure our devices kind of meet the requirements. And a lot of it is really about performance, temperature grade, et cetera. But that's how we interact with the community. And very similar to what Matt said, you can't do this on your own. You have to be part of the entire ecosystem.
Great, thank you. So Arthur, for you, and this kind of ties into a question from the audience, I'll just weave those in as we go along in our conversation. I know you don't work at Waymo, but I'm glad you mentioned that. I rode in a Waymo when I was in San Francisco, and I have to admit it was a little freaky to be in the vehicle. I was worried that it was going to drive off before I had my leg in there and the door shut, but it was good.
Great.
So what specific safety improvements have been observed with the implementation of an AI driver assist system? And then the second part of the question is, could AI recognize a crime being committed in a car or a medical emergency and divert to, a hospital?
Right. So one thing people don't realize is that when you drive, I think I already mentioned the reaction time aspect. I'm going to mention a few more though. When you drive, typically your eyes are focused in a particular area. Hopefully they're focused. And one thing that automated driving lets us do is just to be clear, our vehicles are not only always focused, by design, but always looking 360 degrees around the vehicle. Something that, safety-wise is not something that really is, humans are in some sense capable of doing. And so what our algorithms allow us to do is to approach a level of safety that humans will not be able to approach, at least in the current paradigm of driving. So maybe one more specific example here would be one thing that AI lets us do, or that our algorithms allow us to do, is to reason about areas in the world where we don't see an object. A lot of people might think about strange circumstances for self-driving cars, or unsafe circumstances, or ones in which there's very little time to react and something comes from behind an object. That's a very typical scenario. Those scenarios are actually accounted for in algorithms so that the vehicle is much more ready to react, maybe slows down as a result of that. And we have a safety case around it so that we feel that we are at or clearly above human level performance there. Many of these, there's a lot of different techniques we use, but many of these high level important aspects of our safety case, or the safety case in general, need to rely on AI in order to get the performance that we need. And that's really where a lot of this, a lot of the improved safety comes from. Whether or not companies say it or not, that's really what we need to rely on. Maybe to go to the second question now, can AI recognize a crime being committed in the car or a medical emergency and alert authorities to drive to a hospital? Most of the examples that I've seen to date where we have some of these, for example, you could see examples of people slashing tires for automated vehicles. You could see people throwing rocks at automated vehicles. Maybe these are not quite the kind of crimes you're talking about, but in general, those are just observed through the sensors of the vehicle much more traditionally, and there are no special purpose AI algorithms to identify those cases, at least that I'm aware of personally. I do think AI will grow over time, and to be honest, if we're getting to the point where companies are starting to invest in the AI algorithms to recognize crimes being committed, I'd say that's a pretty advanced place to be for a self-driving car company. Just to be, that'd be a proud moment, I think, for a lot of folk there. And lastly, to alert authorities or drive to a hospital. One thing that a lot of people consider a cop-out in L4 technologies is that many companies rely on a remote assistance capability in which folk are monitoring the vehicles and can make calls for what the vehicle should do remotely. There are centers of people who are able to dial into the vehicle and see what's going on around the vehicle. And just to be clear, right now, most of those, I believe, are still done classically, without AI, that folk just see that we really do need to call the hospital right now and call the hospital right now based on the situation of what's occurring in a vehicle. In the future, I do think that there will be a clear business case to see if AI could possibly be a good fit to take over some of those duties. But right now, I don't think that's generally part of the strategy within L4 driving.
Great, thank you. Matt, Anthony, any thoughts on the safety of AI and improvements using AI?
Well, I think obviously there's a good space for AI to learn and then to recognize all kind of behavior. I think that's not new for industry. Obviously, previous civilian camera can do a lot of things, in the parking lot to recognize whether there's any dangers in the parking lot, for example, right? So even in the retail space, right? So a lot of sensing technologies, a lot of algorithms could be developed. So I do believe in the future, there's a lot of experience going to shift from previous different industry into the automotive in order to facilitate the safety, and facilitate all kind of the decision making to the manners without proper manners.
Yeah, I think the technology is there already. The question is, is anybody kind of focused on the safety in terms of crime? Because there are definitely cameras inside the cabin, right? If there's a crime being committed, these cameras should be able to alert authorities, for example, or even outside. So I think, again, the technologies there is, who can enable it and who's going to be the ones that's kind of focus on that. I just think right now people are just worried about just making sure these cars are driving safely on the roads at this point. And in terms of crimes and stuff, I think that's probably kind of secondary right now. There's just not a lot of robo-type cars on the road at this point, right? And we're still relying on a lot of just human interaction at this point. We're not there, and just like you mentioned, Waymo, a lot of people, it's a taxi service in San Francisco. Not a lot of people are using it. There's just still not that trust factor there, right? So I think we have to get over that hump. Again, I think technology's there, just like Matt said. A lot of IP cameras, security cameras are out there. China's got a ton of them, right? They've got algorithms that can sense crime out there, and I think that is there. So how do we get to a point? Do we integrate that into every camera that includes cars? Yeah, maybe, right? And then you've got issues with privacy, right? So. Again, in-cabin privacy is another thing. So I think there's got to be regulation around this. It can be done. I just don't know if someone, taking a robo-taxi goes, I want the government or somebody else monitoring me in a space, right? That's supposed to be kind of private. So a lot of things I think we have to think about.
Yep. Great, thank you. So let's transition to that user experience and adoption. And the next question kind of ties into a question from the audience. So how do you think public perception of AI in driving affects its adoption? And then the question from the audience is, how do you convince someone who's always been in control of their vehicle that AI controlled is the future?
Maybe let's go through these. So in terms of convincing, can you repeat the first question just to make sure?
Sure. So how do you think public perception of AI and driving affects its adoption?
Yeah, I think part of the public perception is, this is new, and some of the most important inputs there come from notable collisions that may or may not have occurred in the past, strange driving behavior. I'm talking about AI as applied to automated vehicles, of course. The overwhelming response that folk have when experiencing an L4 vehicle is typically there's strong, cautious hesitation for the first 2 minutes of the ride, and then roughly at the 2-minute mark, they switch to reading email on their phone, which is to say, it very quickly is clear that it's the whole goal of that engineering is to mimic very boring driving. And a lot of very intense, difficult engineering is done to ensure that a lot of safety edge cases are properly covered in the ways that I mentioned earlier. But what I would certainly recommend anybody who is concerned with this is, first and foremost, sit in one and realize that a lot of your concerns, at least emotionally, typically disappear. Now, more quantitatively, maybe what matters a lot, when you get down to paper, and what I worry about a lot and what I think a lot about, there's a lot of checks and balances that are done to ensure that a lot of those safety edge cases are properly accounted for by those AI algorithms. And I think companies' transparency with that over time will help improve that public perception of the technology. So recently Waymo released their safety record. Folk don't know. Lots of companies are releasing their safety case. These are things that I think help a lot, so people see that there's a ton of very innovative, difficult engineering that's going on to help ensure that these AI algorithms are there to help us to make things more safe.
Thank you, Arthur. Anthony or Matt, any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think going back to your first point, Arthur, is people have to try it, right, to get familiar with it. And I don't know if that's kind of driven by, local governments getting people involved, or if they even care, right? Because I think autonomous driving at some point will make the road safer. The way I kind of look at technology is everyone's always afraid of new technology, right? When they went from horse to real cars, I'm sure there was a lot of accidents with cars because they just didn't know how to use it, right? And development. There will be accidents, there will be issues. It's just we have to kind of learn and evolve. A lot of Tesla crashes, Waymo has its issues, but technology will evolve. What is interesting to me is you look at ChatGPT, everyone's starting to use it right now, right? It's AI. Right? Now, if they become familiar with that on their phone, if that gets adopted in a car, right? Hopefully, they're more familiar with it, and the fear factor goes down. But ultimately, got to get into one of these cars, try it. I personally drive a Tesla, and I put on autopilot. It still scares the crap out of me. All right, it's not because I don't feel that it's safe. It's just right now. It's just still too jerky, right? There's a lot of jerkiness to the driving, and again, I think as it becomes smoother, it learns. People will become, will adopt it and adapt it more. I would use it more if I constantly turn it off because I'm kind of afraid when it makes these turns. Right? But again, you got to keep using it to get, not only for you to become familiar, but the system has to learn, right? The only way it learns is if you have millions and millions of miles of driving on every single road out there, right? And everything gets stored in the cloud, everything gets learned, it gets developed, multiple cars, and like all the other cars kind of learn off of it. So I think the value is there, it's just a matter of time, right?
Yeah, I agree. I think the trust is kind of a learning experience, not only for machine, but also for human. Yeah. And what Tesla or Waymo is doing, or probably your company doing the same, right? So when you're machine learning the road condition, you also display in the display this image in the display for user to learn. Okay, this is what machine judgment, and then build out a credit or build out a trusty. And I think with more and more, it's been built out like this, and also more and more entrepreneurs committed to this area. So more and more autonomous drive vehicle in the on the road, and then at the day, those vehicles can communicate, right? So increase the safety, right? So I'm personally very positive to see this kind of progressing in the future with that autonomous drive in the market that actually open up another space for all of us to enjoy in the vehicle. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Great, thank you. So I know, Anthony, you touched on it a little bit, but policy and regulation, when we think about that with the AI systems and autonomous driving, what regulatory measures should be in place to ensure the safe deployment of AI driver assist systems? Do you want to start, Anthony?
Yeah, it has to start from the government for sure. I mean, if you look at China, they basically say, oh, look, EV's got to be the car by 2030. And part of EV is all these technologies that's put in it. They have communities that they set up for testing a lot of these kind of AI driving technologies, right? So I think in the U.S. it's different because we rely on private sector to do most of this. The government just isn't fast enough to adopt new technologies. I think that's really the biggest problem here in the U.S. and Europe. So, and I think policy is one thing, but also the government's got to be able to make it less scary for people, right? And I think regulation has to be in place. Everyone has to have the same set of rules, right, from state to state. What's to say, like, you have an autonomous driving car that goes from one state to another, the rules are different. It can't be. All the regulations got to be the same, right? Because otherwise these cars are only specific to sometimes counties, right? So yeah, I think things got to change and regulations got to change. It can't rely on the private sector to make those, because in the end they're all doing different things. That's the unfortunate part of it, right?
Yeah, I agree. I think that's also a reason why you see a lot of the entrepreneurs that have autonomous driving in different city and then try to accumulate different mileage, right? So there has to be somehow unified by the government sectors, and also in a way to protect the general public's privacy concern. Yeah.
Arthur?
Yeah, ultimately a lot of governments have this difficult decision where they need to decide, like, should there be very strong, heavy regulation on a new nascent industry, or do we try to, or does the government try to let that industry grow as fast as it can, as it is? And that's varies from from country to country, for what it's worth, tremendously. My take is, I think over time it'll be very natural exactly how, at least in the US, authorities should potentially apply regulation to self-driving vehicles. Today, there's a lot of proposed standards, but none that are heavily enforced by federal agencies. Right now, a lot of federal agencies work in a very reactionary manner, but at the same time, that has allowed companies to release this technology, very quickly within the US, very competitively within the world market as a result. And I actually think it has been not a bad strategy at all thus far. I think they have to continuously reconsider a few things. One is figure out regulation that impacts some of the constants that the technology has to have over long periods of time. Regulation around Gen AI or LLMs is likely going to go, out of date very quickly. 2 years ago, I suspect this Reuters conference probably didn't have a lot to talk about regarding LLMs, and it's a much more recent highlight of AI. There will be another much more recent highlight of AI 2 to 4 years from now. Working on some of the high-level driving behaviors that matter, that vehicles will need to do no matter what for decades to come, are the kind of places where I think regulation can make a big difference versus some of the places where we see cutting-edge advances constantly at a lower level on the vehicle. And we're always more than happy. Another thing I think does have to happen is that companies do need to be able to respond truthfully and quickly to regulatory bodies as necessary. Even though regulatory bodies today within the US are largely reactionary, that's still an onus on companies to be able to respond, with good, important root cause efforts, with good, important scenario descriptions of what situations may have occurred. And there still is some responsibility that exists today. I think that'll only grow over time.
Great, thank you.
Can I add something
Please.
to this? I think there are social and ethical issues with AI that is incorporated, especially decision-making in a car, right? So right now, if you drive, you're liable, you have insurance. But when there's an AI car, how's the decision from car to car makers are made? If the car is unable to make a decision, does it just stop and force the driver to take over, or does it pull over? And these are, I think, regulations and decisions that need to be made. Everyone makes these decisions differently, right? Every algorithm makes it differently. So I think at some point we have to have some sort of regulation from the government that says, hey, in these situations, this is what you need to do, right? And it has to be the same for every car company, every algorithm that's out there, right? So that, to me, that's also the basis. The other thing is data. Everyone stores their own data. No one shares the data, right? And data is so important in terms of safety in a lot of situations. There's insurance companies that have data. There's car companies that have data, right? And so how do we get to a point where we share data and to make driving safer, right? Decision making safer. Right?
Great. Any parting thoughts as we have about 7 seconds left? No. Lunchtime. All right. Thank you very much for
Thank you
joining
all.
us
Thank
today.
you.
Thank you, gentlemen.